Hello, welcome to another episode of Faces of the MRM, rather Voices of the MRM today. Today we have a guest who goes by the name MRA Title IX. He's active on Reddit. I've put a link to his social media accounts in the description. And he's active in the Men Are Human Discord Friday chats. I know we had a pretty good discussion just this past Friday. So welcome, how are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you getting me on here and really showing what people in the men's rights movement look like. I think it's important to humanize the people that are doing these things. So I really
Now, I
appreciate that.
know for privacy reasons, well, first of all, I appreciate you. You are one of the most active MRAs that I know. Again, I am going to post a link to your Reddit accounts so people can see just how active you are with your Title IX work. And I know for privacy reasons, you do want to keep your face hidden. That's fine. But so let's get into it. Your main focus is on Title IX.
Yep.
And it's not that you are against the idea of equality or Title IX, but you are against the way that it's executed in a hypocritical way or a one-sided way.
Oh, absolutely. And to that point, I very much support the existence of Title IX, especially as written. And most of the rules and regulations surrounding discrimination and educational programs I support, and I think that they should be applied equally to everybody. That these laws should protect everybody regardless of their gender. And so I'm challenging that narrative that they're currently there to just protect women.
So, what do you think the problems are with how Title IX is used today?
I think it's a legacy of when it was passed that it was originally passed to help women, and they did need a lot of help in breaking down a lot of the barriers and sexist things that were going on in education. And society never really took a look at it again and said, are we applying this in a way that's relevant to the current times? Like, you can really easy statistic to show that we're not doing that is that the gender gap in college is worse than when Title IX was passed, except it's men now. So
Yeah,
where's the discussion?
60% of university undergrads and 40%, somewhere between 58 to 60% of undergrad students are female, and somewhere between 40 to 42% of undergrad students are male,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, and when Title IX was passed, the gender gap was I think a 10% difference between men and women. So it was like 40 to 60 or 45 to 55, and it's about 50% larger now, and absolute silence from our government. We're even having trouble getting them to enforce the rules that are discriminating against men, let
So
alone
on
passing legislation.
so on paper, Title IX does protect men as well. It's not written in a gendered way, but the way it's actually executed is unfair to men. Would you agree?
Uh, Mostly, a little caveat there in that it is written in a gendered way, and that it references sex, and there had been some court cases previously that led to some pretty ridiculous conclusions, like that non-binary people were not protected under Title IX because they chose not to identify with the sex, right?
Okay, wow,
Nobody
yeah,
would
so
think that it should apply that way, and I definitely don't endorse that. But we could see how courts have even at times interpreted it in very strange ways. So um, I wouldn't say that it's entirely genderless, but it should be, and that is the interpretation now. It should apply to everybody equally.
So, in a minute, I'm going to ask you about your activism and some specific cases and some specific examples because I know you have a very long list in mind. But just really quickly, what are some reactions that you get when you say you think Title IX should be applied equally? Specifically, what negative reactions do you get from people, and who are the people who tend to give you the most criticism?
I find that people tend to be more open-minded than I would have initially expected. Uh, there are some knee-jerk reactions initially, but I found that those people are pretty easy to talk to and reason with, and at the end, they usually understand the point that I'm coming from, and that these are federal civil rights laws. We can't be advocating that it's okay to violate them. And when I initially bring it up, outside of the MRA sphere, people will think that I'm saying that, men overall are, uh, discriminated against and faced all these obstacles and, playing the oppression Olympics kind of a game. And that they'll think I don't think women face any hurdles or issues in education at all. And that's not what I'm saying. That there are things that women still need help with in education. For example, computer science. There's still a lot of discrimination going on in that, and we see the effects of that in representation. I'm just saying that we should apply these laws to everybody. They're there to protect everybody. Me advocating for the rights of men and against discrimination against men doesn't invalidate that women face discrimination in education too sometimes. And after I mention that, it kind of puts to rest a lot of the initial fears and knee-jerk reactions that people have going into that conversation. So overall, I would say that the reception I've had, even outside of the MRA sphere, has tended to be positive.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I was surprised, to be honest. Still
I,
being a
I
little
thought,
bit cautious, not revealing my identity yet. I'm starting to branch out into a more public profile. We'll see how things go.
yeah, no, I don't blame you. I've often said that it's not MRA beliefs people object to, it's the label. Because if you take away the MRA label, people suddenly have very little to. When you actually break down our ideas, people don't really have anything to object to. It's very difficult to object to our messages and our stances on things. But okay, so let's get into your activism. Um, what is this specific case or example that you want to bring up? Because I know you have a lot. You've been very active for quite a long time. You've done some very good work.
Yeah. Um, I want to bring up the case, and I got to be careful talking about this one because it's ongoing and I have damages. This is the case that uh, really spurred on my activism, and I've been in MRA for uh, probably like over 2 decades now, and I've been around through all the different changes and things that have gone on within our activist coalition, I guess. And when I was in grad school, um, I was informed of these issues, and I had them in the back of my head. I'd participated in some online discussions and whatnot. And when I got to grad school, it was so rampant and apparent that there was an anti-male bias and discrimination in the program that like I just kept my head like I couldn't even think about this uh, and even consider being a men's rights activist. I kind of just had to compartmentalize and keep moving forward. I couldn't rock the boat in that program. And it was towards the end when I was getting near graduation that um, it was just a straw that broke the camel's back type of a deal. The school was advertising a job fair that said that was women only. A job fair. How poorly do we have to be implementing these federal civil rights laws when a school feels so emboldened that they won't face repercussions for violating them that they advertise a job fair that only allows women? And so I wrote a complaint to the school, and
A quick note. Um, for well over a decade now, young female graduates have had a lower unemployment rate than young male graduates. So the argument that it's to help women who are disadvantaged in the workplace really wouldn't work for someone in your age group because men have been more likely to be unemployed for well over a decade coming out of college time.
yeah, and the schools aren't allowed to try and rectify like national statistics and things like this by implementing discriminatory programs. They can only do it to rectify their own deficiencies. Where if a school has a legacy of discrimination, let's say like it used to be an all-male school and they went to being co-ed, they do have to take proactive steps to rectify that legacy. And so they could have discriminatory programs to help get more women enrolled. And That's just not the case here. They can't look and say, oh, even if it was that women had a harder time getting jobs afterwards, they still could not say, oh, only women can attend this job fair, because it's not something that's internal to the school. Um, so I filed a complaint against this program, and uh, the school was not exactly receptive to it, and they did end up um, telling the organization that was hosting it that they couldn't discriminate, and they had to make some changes to their bylaws and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. What changes did you make? And I don't think it's relevant to just require them to make changes to their bylaws. This is an organization that is focused on women in engineering. They're more than well aware of what the rules are. They chose to violate them anyway. It's not enough that we simply tell people they need to change these things. There needs to be tangible penalties. Otherwise, they're just going to keep doing it and say sorry whenever they get caught. That's not how we get change, and that's not how we get change that's lasting. So I took a look and around the program a little bit, something I had been avoiding, and there was a heap of violations of similar things, and coming out of the same organization. So I said to the school, like, they're not even following the changes to their bylaws. They're still committing all these violations. Here's a bunch of them, and I wrote complaints to the school over them. Well, turns out, so this case blew up way faster than I expected it to. Ended up writing and complaining to OCR, and even got a
OCR?
uh, the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights,
Got it. Thanks.
and I wrote a complaint to them, and they ended up dismissing it without a single reference to the law as having informed their opinion after spending 1.5 years reviewing it with a senior attorney assigned to the case.
Wow.
The
So they
school was,
basically they just brushed it off.
they gave me the middle finger. The school was running a women only class that was 4 credits, like actual college credits, only women could attend it, and it auto enrolled all freshman female engineers. OCR didn't care.
Auto enrolled. So by default, there theoretically it's impossible for a man to get the same amount of credits as a woman attending that school. Do I have that right in my head?
Well, I think there was like a general like everybody orientation program, but it doesn't really matter in this case. It was still a violation,
Right.
and it calls into question your exact point that uh, did these women have to pay for extra college credits that their male counterparts did not have? Were there additional requirements for them to get their degree that their male counterparts didn't have to do?
Right. So it would go both ways, you're saying. It
Yeah,
could right not only be the angle of, well, the men didn't have the same opportunities, but maybe the women had higher requirements.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think as soon as you start making things unequal, you make things problematic. It
yeah,
seems obvious.
the school actually ruled, because I'd complained about this to the school too. The school ruled that it was not a violation of Title IX.
What was their argument?
None.
They
They
just
just
they
said,
was just
yeah,
nope, that's it.
yep.
Because
And
they knew they would get away with it.
yeah, and I started asking them about the status of my cases, and the school's attorney, the Title IX department, stopped working with me. They just told me I had to direct all communications to the school attorney, and the school attorney told me, yeah, we're not going to answer these questions, and we're not going to help engage in informal discovery outside of official venues. Basically telling me I had to go to court if I even wanted to know the status of my cases.
So
OCR didn't care.
very hostile
Yeah.
reaction to what is essentially you seeking equal treatment.
Yep. It's been several years now, and the school has not informed me the status of those cases, whether or not they're open, closed, nothing.
So they're essentially hostile to the idea of giving their male students an equal education.
Absolutely. And I used I retained an attorney for this, and after my FOIA requests were rejected, I had my attorney craft one up and send it to them, and we ended up getting a lot of the internal emails from their Title IX department, which they were very much not expecting based on the nature of those emails. And comes out they didn't even file my complaints in their internal system. They used the quote unquote the spreadsheet, and one of their staff that that handles some of the logistics of the Title IX complaints, there was an email in there of her asking, "Hey, why didn't we file these in our official system?" The response
Did
was,
they
"Oh,
bring,
we're doing it in the spreadsheet."
did they because I'm sure you know much more about this than I do. Did they violate the law or any law by not doing so?
Um, I mean, I believe so. That
Certainly, it's
because of the
certainly
nature of my complaints, they treated and handled them differently than they would other complaints, and
it's
that they're not allowed
certainly
to do.
at the very least, it's certainly very disingenuous
Right. So
and very.
after OCR dismissed this, I wrote an appeal and I was like, this is more than unacceptable because even to appeal, I have to state how OCR did not interpret the law correctly, maybe misapplied case law or stuff like this. I said, how can I even possibly appeal when you didn't even reference the law as having informed your opinion? And so I wrote this huge appeal and sent it in. Um, and they just didn't respond for months. I sent multiple follow-up emails. My attorney tried contacting them. They were ghosting me. This is the Federal Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, not responding to me, not responding to my complaints. And I had to get I ended up writing a federal senator, and the senator's casework team cracked the whip on OCR and finally got them to respond. But it wasn't until then.
You know what it is they're hoping that the process will exhaust you or bore
Yes.
you to the point of just giving up and going away. So good job on you for doing this. This is why I'm encouraging MRAs to be more active, more visible, and more active in politics because it took that senator's whip to get things rolling, and it really took you persisting and persisting and persisting. So, very good work, very good
And
work.
so going through all this, I'm thinking to myself, a lot of other guys, especially people that are currently in school and having to deal with all of that, they don't have the time to deal with this bullshit. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to start writing these complaints. I'm going to start posting about my activism so people can learn from me. They can learn the mistakes that I made along the way. They can learn like how to craft these so that OCR has to listen to you and that they will respond and take action. And so that first initial one, there's a lot of things that I did wrong. I learned how to do it better. And, each complaint that I'm filing, I'm writing them stronger. I'm getting results now. Just recently, I had a case resolved against Hackbright. They're run by a co-ed university that takes federal financial assistance. And in their history, they've only had 3 males.
Wow.
Um, and I'm like, well, what are you doing to correct this? You used to be women only, but then Strayer took over your operations. Strayer University can't discriminate based on sex. What are you doing to correct this legacy of discrimination? And so OCR actually ruled in my favor on that. And they're going to be having to report demographic requirements and revise a lot of the language of their programming to be more gender neutral and make it clear that, yes, they do support men.
And of course, the hope is that this triggers a chain reaction of looking at other universities across the country because I'm sure they'll because you have more cases you can talk about, I'm sure. So we know that this is not just happening at this one university. This is probably widespread everywhere. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I've not found a university yet where I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, like you might have a small violation here or there, but overall, you're pretty on point. That's expected. Sometimes things happen, student organization messes up or whatever. If it's one or two small things, I wouldn't care. But in every case I've looked at, it's been systemic across the entire university to the point where you can't ignore it. You can't count it as a one-off. It's institutional policy. It's just not written.
Wow. So every university, so far, every single university that you've looked at, this is a big problem, a significant problem.
Yeah.
Wow.
For example, the petition I have right now against University of Louisville, you can look across their university and anywhere they have a diversity program that mentions gender, it's only when women are the underrepresented gender. Only.
So so when men are the underrepresented gender, they just ignore it.
Yep. And the programs with the worst gender gaps are nursing and education. And it's like 80% women in both of them for decades. And the university Nothing. Doesn't care.
And let's hop, unless you probably know already. What is the undergrad gender ratio at Louisville?
It's about 42% men right now.
42-58. So about the national average.
And then graduate school is slightly worse. It's about 40% men.
Really?
Yeah, I found that surprising too.
So that's so basically, so for every three female students, there's two male students.
Right.
Imagine if that were reversed, what the reaction would be like.
Well, we know what it would be like. We passed civil rights laws to fix it.
Right. Imagine if a woman was advocating for her rights in a situation where she was underrepresented and discriminated against, and she was completely ignored. That's exactly how feminism would present their own case. And yet, now that we're the ones underrepresented, that's being done to us.
Yep.
So I became familiar with Title IX and the issue of Title IX through sports, and how Title IX has resulted in a lot of men's teams being cut. And a lot of people would disagree with me, saying, no, no, it's about budget. But that's ridiculous, because there's a lot of men's teams who were simply redesignated as clubs rather than proper teams, because the school was no longer allowed to have them as a team. Because one of the rules of, and I'm sure you know well aware of this, so please correct me if I have a mistaken, is a university can demonstrate equality if the student scholarship population is proportionate to the student body. So if a college is 60% female, then 60% of the athletes have to be female. So you're essentially forcing a perpetuation of that inequality. Male students never have an opportunity to catch up. They can never close that gap, because as long as the student body population is 60-40, then the student athlete population has to remain 60-40. Do I have that basically right?
Yeah, mostly. If I'm remembering correctly, and I don't remember the exact portion of this law, because athletics is hard to write complaints over unless you're in the program. Um, the the athletics has to be proportional to the student body, but also demand is considered as part of that.
Right.
That if none of your students, like if none of the women at the school wanted to have a sports team, the school could just not have sports teams for
Okay.
women, right?
Okay.
Like you
I,
can't force people to be in your sports team.
right.
There's got to be a little bit of wiggle room there um, for logistical and practical reasons. But pretty much the standard is what you said, that it's proportional to student body. And a good case example right now is that I have going on is against the Texas Women's University. They don't have a single male sports team. They are a public co-ed university run by the state of Texas. Not a
Wow.
single one. And
Yeah.
part of the argument when women were entering um, these previously male-only colleges was that they had to create these sports teams, even if the student population was not, we didn't have good representation of women in them yet. They still had to create some of these sports teams, because the understanding was, if you don't have these sports teams, you're also not attracting women there. Like this,
Mm.
the existence of these teams helps attract that demographic. So if you don't have them, that is in a way its own form of discrimination, where there's this additional draw to the university that you're not giving to that demographic.
Because it's not just a place on a sports team, it's a college scholarship.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
of course. And I know that you can look at almost any major university, and I'm going to define major as the universities that are in the major sports conferences. So like the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12,
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12. Randomly pick any school on that list: Florida, Georgia, Auburn, FSU, University of Miami, Virginia Tech, um, Virginia. Pick any one of those. Maybe Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech might be the two exceptions, but the vast majority will have more women's teams than men's teams, often by a significant number. And that is directly a result of Title IX, because it's not possible to have an equal number of male athletes as female athletes under the rules of Title IX. At least that's how it, and I know they do have a three-pronged test they can get around that. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact that the majority of major schools have fewer men's teams than women's teams is telling to how it plays out in the real world.
Yeah, I do agree though with that when it comes to uh, these kinds of things, that budgetary concerns are never a justification for only helping one gender. That if you can't, like, you can't just enact a program to help men or just a program to help women because you can't afford to do it for the other gender. That's never accepted as a justification. So when a lot of these schools after Title IX was passed, came up against budgetary issues where these men's sports couldn't be funded the same way, and they can't just materialize money out of the air to fund these women's sports. There was a lot of concern over that, and it sucks. And if they had to cut, men's sports team or whatever, it is what it is. And I don't think that we should ever accept that I don't have enough money as a reason for continuing discrimination. It seems pretty flimsy and highly liable to be abused.
Well, all I can say is I am definitely going to have you back to talk more in depth about some of your cases and some of the work that you're doing. You are very much literally a men's rights activist, true to the definition. It's the people like you who really make the difference. People who are really going out to the court system, filing lawsuits, and really putting in the work. So I gotta say, not only thank you for doing this video, but thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I hope that some people out there listen to this and realize that they can file complaints against these programs. And if you don't have the energy to do it, you can absolutely drop me a DM and let me know that there's discriminatory programs going on. Sometimes those students have access to emails and things that can make or break complaints. People can't write complaints if they don't know that these things are going on. So sometimes just simply dropping a DM saying, "Hey, I got this email. This is kind of messed up, and you want to take a look at this?" Yeah, I'll take a look at it and file my own complaint. Can't file on
Awesome.
behalf of you, but I could certainly file my own.
So I'm gonna post a link to your Reddit accounts. You said your Twitter.
Yep, I have a new Twitter a couple days ago. Yep.
Okay, and anything else?
That's it for now.
Okay, people go from your Reddit and your Twitter, they can contact you and get your other stuff and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've
Okay.
I've started working with the website Title IX for All. He's actually one of the mods of my sub too, and I've been talking a lot with NCFM. NCFM's actually helping me edit a pretty colossal complaint right now that it might make some people unhappy. Might actually result in a university losing funding for like the first time ever.
Yeah.
So we'll
Well,
see.
I mean, something does have to be done.
Yeah.
And of course, just to clarify, because I know people are going to watch this and try and spin it, it's not that you want the university to lose funding. It's that you want to rectify this problem. And if there are no tangible consequences, the problem is never going to get fixed.
Yeah, and in this case, the university has had multiple chances over time. They've violated several previous OCR resolutions, and it's almost undeniable, in my opinion, that they have been knowingly and fraudulently signing federal assurances of agreement to get continued funding. And that is illegal. That has personal criminal penalties to the people that are doing it. I don't think that should be tolerated. And if this isn't a case where a university risks losing funding, then the law has no teeth.
Right. Right. Well, okay. Thank you very much. And I will be seeing you again.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.